We are back with another great episode of Liam Picks Fights. Very happy today to be joined by my man Gordo Gambles, and we're doing it again, folks. We're going through Dana White's Contender Series from a betting perspective. Very excited to be doing so. Gordo, tell the people, how are you doing today, my friend?
Man, I'm doing great. I love the return of Dana White Contender Series. We got a good thing going here. More money to be made. I know I tweeted out some plays already, and I'm excited to go over them with you. You had a great stream last night with Narco Cop, so cheers for that. And I'm excited to talk them over with you, my friend.
Thank you, brother. And, the good thing is I've actually done a little bit more tape on some of the fights that I wasn't as brushed up on for Narco stream. So appreciated Narco for having me on. It was a great opportunity, had a lot of fun. But I'm actually, a little bit more convicted on some of my plays, got a little bit more information to work with, certainly. And so hopefully we can find some new nuggets of information and help the people find some winners on the way out here, because a lot of people have been enjoying this stream as well. We do it normally pretty close to fight time. So everybody who's placing those last minute wagers, when the totals are opened up, when the prop markets are open to everybody, I think it's a fun show. So hopefully we get people lighting us up in the chat. What do you guys got on this show? Because I think that a lot of people are taking action. If you're looking at this line movement, it seems like everybody in the market's been participating on this fight card in particular. So without further ado, we can get started, man. We've got, Dana White's Contender Series, week 6 here. And I got to say, from a talent perspective, one of the lower talent events that the Contender Series has put on this year, in my opinion. And, I think that we've got a couple, decent enough fights sprinkled throughout. I like that feature bout. I think it should be pretty good fun. I think that the flyweight matchup is pretty good here. But, we've got runaway favorites. We've got my man Dalton in the chat talking about Valdez up to minus 1,100. Bro, look again. It's up to minus 1,500, my friend. We're really seeing a lot of line movement on this card, a lot of action. I would think there's a ton of parlays resting on this card as well, because there's so many big favorites, because the PRPs have been absolutely slamming for Cody Saftik of late. So I think that the parlay market is going right now, and I think that that's contributing to a lot of these line moves. But we can start with the very first bout of the night. I do have a bet on this fight, a handful of them. I do have a couple parlays that include Valdez, but, I'd never touch it at this minus 1,500 number. It's just absurd at this point. He's probably in every money line parlay that's going on this weekend. And so for that reason, Murphy's Law will dictate he loses in the first exchange. However, outside of that, guys, I do think that Valdez is the superior fighter here. I liked a lot of what I saw from him on tape. I can see why he's a favorite. I can see why people are backing him. If people wiki cap this fight, I can see why they would fade Patrik White. And if you look into Patrik White's game, I can also see why you would fade Patrik White. I think that while there are some likable tools, Narco talked about on the stream last night, the leg kicks are brutal. He's finished a couple guys with those, and that's true. But it is at a low level, which we all acknowledge. Then we've also seen he's got pretty crisp hands, pretty fast enough hands. But I've not seen anything, tremendously special. Seems like he's fighting a low level of opposition. He's got good enough power that he's able to put those guys away. What I do like to see is that he's a multi-sport athlete. He's got boxing matches available online. Although granted, the MMA guy that he fought twice, he also boxed that guy and cleaned him up every time. So not sure why they wanted to get that guy beat up every other weekend. But I think that, all things considered, Valdez is probably the better fighter in my mind. I think that the ground game should be a level above. And what I've liked about his game is that he's pretty insistent about it. Valdez will go back to his takedowns. Even if he loses position, he gets right back in to wrestling, which another fighter on this card I'll talk about. I noticed the same kind of thing, which is, not everybody's going to be a technical savant, but persistence is annoying, and it's really hard to deal with for a lot of people. So I do think that that's an important quality to have as a grappler. And I do see persistence in Valdez's game. I think he's got pretty good ground and pound. I think he's got pretty decent positional control. And, the concerning things on tape for me on the White side of this matchup is that, he once got taken down directly into the mount, and he was able to buck that guy right back over. But, what happens if you get stuck underneath somebody who's a really competent player? in the mount. You might get finished. You might get brutalized. You might spend 4.5 minutes underneath them for the rest of the round and losing cardio, energy, will to continue. So I think that, he got lucky that he was out athleticing some people in those spots. And I also think in addition, I don't have the strongest reads, Dalton, to tell you the truth, but I will tell you I do have a play on one of these fights not to go to decision. So I'll get into that. But Dalton's asking about the over-unders. Not a tremendous read on my side. Now, Gordo here on the other side may have something for you. So without further ado, I'm going to kick this over to Gordo, but I'll come back at the end here and explain where my betting action ended up and why it might be harder to follow me on this action because the line has moved. Gordo, I'll kick it to you, brother.
Yeah, man, I wouldn't really look too much into this fight because it has just been blown out of proportion. And no matter how much better Valdez is on the ground, and no much how better he is compared to the other level of competition that White has faced, I still don't think that anybody on the Contender Series should be -1,000, -1,500 favorite. I mean, they're not proven. We don't know we can get with that day. So it's really tough for me to like any kind of chalk and stuff like that, especially on stuff such low level. But you can see why. Patrik White fought in Alaska. He's lost to guys who are 1-3, and he's only fought absolute cans on the regional scene. I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of his wins are against fighters with no fights. And whereas he does have some good hands, some powerful leg kicks, it's not like Valdez is just some weak guy who has been on the regional fight scene. I think Valdez is one of his best attributes. He's a tough guy. He will walk through him, and he knows what he wants to do. He wants to get to the mat, and that's exactly where we've seen Patrik White struggle with, right? So I think that this fight ends really early. I think the only way you could pay me to bet on it right now would be betting an under. But again, the line's juiced to -180 most spots, so it's not like I want to lay that sort of chalk on something like this either. So in all honesty, though, it could be over in 10 seconds. I think Valdez walks him down. We've seen him do it in the past where he just goes right to the fence, right to the takedown. And I think Valdez finishes him and lives up to that price tag. It's just not something that I feel like I have any value betting on. He's not Valentina Shevchenko. He's not very proven. However, he does have the path to victory. He has the tools to get it done. And I'm going to leave it there. I think Valdez absolutely wipes the floor with him, gets him out of there in round 1.
I love it. I love it, my friend. And, the way that I targeted this fight from a betting perspective, I'm very proud of because, the line has completely been steamed in the direction that I backed here. And my only regret is that I did not track both plays at the time because I bet on this fight live on stream, or I think it was just before the stream, but I told everybody about it, basically right after I placed it on Narco's stream. And it was Valdez to win this fight by submission, right? We talked about the fact that he's got a clear level advantage on the ground, but everybody was expecting this fight to win by KO or TKO because White has lost in the past by KO, TKO, I believe. So I think that people were reading into that. Oh, you know what? He's probably just going to get knocked out again. Not so fast. And that line had been steamed down to, I don't know, +150, +125, whatever it was. I can't remember. But the KO line was significantly worse than the submission line. But the fight to end inside the distance was like -240. So I'm like, this makes no sense to me. I think it's actually more likely he submits him than he knocks him out. So, for me, it was a no-brainer. I think that this fight, could actually see the scorecards too. I think in all likelihood, Valdez is going to have his way with him, but I still could see Valdez having his way with him on the ground for 15 minutes without finding the finish. If he's got a good enough ground game, we haven't seen very much of it at all on tape. That's why I just hesitate to say he's definitively bad. He trains at Avalanche Wrestling Academy, I think, in Anchorage. I've never heard anything good about it. I don't know of any other high-level pros that are training out of there. So, I'm not going to endorse that as his training situation. And I will say that on the other side, one of the things that stood out to me, Valdez trains at Entrum Jiu-Jitsu in Tijuana, Mexico, with the likes of Alejandro Perez, who cashed me that +1,000 sub ticket last week. By the way, Brandon Moreno, who I just added a 2-unit bet to my tracker on in the rematch with Davison Figueiredo at -160, by the way. And Marcelo Rojo. So he's training with UFC quality fighters around his weight class. I think that Valdez is the superior fighter, the superior product here. I think this is who the UFC is trying to promote. And I think in all likelihood, he's going to come out here and take him down, snatch a submission. But I also just want to say, I see, all the methods of victory as being relatively similar. I think he's probably going to submit him because of the levels difference. But I would also just say I wouldn't get out over your skis on exposure here. I have half a unit of tracked bets right now on Valdez to win by submission at plus 250. If we turn over to best fight odds right now, Valdez to win by submission plus 180 on DraftKings Sportsbook, plus 155 on BetOnline, which is where I played it initially. So people have been getting after that submission line. It is gone from the price I played it, but still, I think that, that plus 180 on DraftKings, I don't hate it as much. But I'd still say at this point, probably just a stay away, guys. Everybody's gotten to this fight. The feeding frenzy has already happened. I think that, you could probably make a worse investment with your money than throwing, 0.2 units on White at plus 750. I'm not endorsing him as like a talented guy, but I do think that, minus 600, minus 650, I can understand those lines. But as it's just creeping up over that price, it's like, this guy definitely has a puncher's chance. He does hit hard. He has knockouts in boxing. I think that he's going to get worked in all likelihood, and all the data points towards that. But at plus 725, it's just like, I don't know. I would almost think it's dog or pass at minus 1,500. Like, what are you going to get in terms of value? And especially, it's not a Shevchenko, like you mentioned. You want something really bankable and reliable at that price. And I don't think that Valdez is that quality. I do think he's good. I do think he's durable too. That's the other thing. I think he's a pretty durable guy. He's eaten hard shots before, but how do you know somebody's got a good chin, right? That you see them eating clean punches. So I just want to say minus 1,500. Don't parlay that up at this point. Look for other spots. Nope. Start looking ahead to the next card. You know what I'm saying? Alex Rodriguez. Hi, I'm from Valencia, Spain. Friend of Danny Barez. Awesome.
Wow.
Where can I bet? I'm not sure, man. We're over here in Los Estados Unidos. In my case, we got Gordo up in the Great White North. So I'm not sure where you can get access in Spain, but I wish you all the best. I hope you can find a good line, and I'm sure you're going to be betting on your hometown boy. I wish you the best. Jason Kurt says, I use BetMGM and FoxBet. Neither offers props on Dana White Contender Series. That's unfortunate, Mr. Kurtz. I hear you. And it's one of the unfortunate little tricks of the trade here is that these Dana White Contender Series fights don't get the same love. They don't get the same, market exposure, and they don't get the same kind of betting volume for the book. So they don't put as much time, effort, and energy into these lines. Sometimes that's why we can exploit them. But on the other hand, they're also not going to offer as many services because of the lower volume. So something we got to keep in mind. But I think I'm trying to think of what book in New Jersey, maybe DraftKings Sportsbook would be one that you could get access to as a New Jersey consumer, where you can get props on these Dana White's Contender Series fights, Jason. We've got Bunkhoot says, sup, Gordo. So shout out to him. And appreciate everybody in here hopping on. Unibet has props according to Daz. I actually didn't know that, Daz, but I'll have to take a look myself. So awesome. Appreciate everybody in the chat, lighting it up with good information, helping each other out. It is all of us good guys. That's me, and that's Gordo, and that's all you guys in the chat versus these bookies every week. So let's see if we can get another good look here. We got Joseph Holmes. We got Shonte Barnes. Tapology lists this as a light heavyweight fight. We're actually going to see a middleweight contest between these two, and that's important to note. Double checked with the weigh-ins. I should actually pull up my document here. I did take some notes on the weigh-ins and what I thought about these guys. For whatever it's worth, on that first fight of the card, I thought that Valdez looked very jacked up. I thought that Patrik White looked pretty good, cut up, low body fat. So for whatever that's worth on the first fight, that was my weigh-in notes. And then for this fight, Holmes made weight, had a big silly smile on his face. Looked like he had a tiny bit of body fat on him, if I'm honest with you. And on the other side, we got Shonte Barnes, a big, scary-looking guy. Looks like a physical athlete. They had a weird-looking handshake, and then they, posed off. I think that this should be an interesting enough fight, man. Gordo, we'll kick it to you first, brother. How do you feel about it?
I was on sorry, let me get my thoughts on that one. I was just taking in that fight. I mean, 6'4" middleweight fight. You got some good size on my guy Holmes there too. I had no idea that was the case, but that does not change my read on this one at all. I am all over Joseph Ugly Boy Holmes this weekend. And the price tag I think is justified for my opinion. I do think that he has all the skills to pay the bills here. I think he's better everywhere. And I think the big thing to point out on Shonte Barnes' end is look at the level of competition he's facing. I mean, a win over guy who's 15-90, win over guy who's 0-6, win over guy who's 4-21, 1-12. Like, he's facing guys who do not even have winning records at all. And I don't think he's got the same level of talent that Joseph Holmes does. Holmes has fought in Bellator. He's shown off his skills. I think he has a clear path to victory on the ground. And I think that if he gets it there, it'll be over pretty fast. I do like the under in the spot as well, but I'm going to play it safe. I think Shonte Barnes gets it done. You follow me on Twitter. I did post out the little parlay yesterday with the Chargers who already won. So I got 2.5 unit, almost plus money on Shonte Barnes going in this weekend. And I'm very happy with that. Fought over in Bellator. He's got some great mat skills. And I think his boxing isn't as bad as people are making it out to be as well. The only fear I do have is he doesn't always initiate those ground battles. He's always usually someone will shoot on him and he'll win the exchange and he will end up on top, and that's how he gets submission. I would love to see him take down Holmes this weekend, control him on the ground, and have a nice little win there. Sorry, take down Barnes this weekend and control him on the ground there, because I do think he's a clear advantage. I think he's able to lock up a sub there, and I think he's going to be able to cash some tickets for me. 2.5 units. I don't like laying that much of Contender series and low-level fights, but I do think he has a clear skill set advantage and a clear path to victory to win this one here.
Absolutely, brother. And, one of the things I think is interesting here, something I always look towards is, the record in decisions. I like to see how somebody's performing, when the fight hits the scorecards. And we've got 0-0 in decisions for Shonte Barnes. And that really tells a lot of the story, He's also fighting a very low level of competition. Gordo mentioned that. Let me put some numbers to what you're saying. 39 and 154 is what I have. I think Narcos at 41 and 154. So if I forgot one of those low level guys and didn't give him credit, I apologize. But yeah, man, that's about a 20% win percentage for his opponents. Fighting Jay Ellis, I pointed out on Narcos stream, he was on a 17 fight losing streak headed into that bout, has lost another 10 since then. So he's really fighting a low level of competition that makes it hard to gauge what his skills are. What they mean if he's going to be taking on a higher level of competition. And Joseph Holmes, on the other hand, he's got an amateur record to look at, which sometimes can give you a little bit more information than if you just look at their pro records. And so he is 0-1 in decisions, right? And I would look at that and say, that gives me some cause for concern. But then I look back and I see he has some wins in the amateurs by decision. This is a guy who can win minutes. And he fought actually a decent level of competition in the amateurs as well, from what I remember. So I think that overall, Holmes would be the side that I'm looking at here. And, this is another fight where people are late to the party, right? If you look at Bet Online, he's minus 700, virtually unplayable at this point. But I did get in on a parlay on Holmes pretty early on. So I have Holmes parlayed up with somebody else that we're going to discuss on the card later at minus 104 odds.
I think we have the same play there.
Nice. I put 1.04 units down on that play. So I'm looking to win a unit back. Parlays can get a little bit dangerous on these Contender Series events. So I try not to get too exposed with them. That being said, if you think that somebody's got a really clear set of advantages, he's going to be the much bigger guy, in my opinion. I think he's going to be the much more physical athlete. I think he has more paths to victory. And I think that he's faced more credible competition and more adversity. So for those reasons, I'm going to support him here. I'm going to pick him outright in the fight, Joseph Holmes. And I did parlay him up on Bet365. I haven't tracked this play. I got probably 5 minutes to do so. So maybe I'll do that here as we kick off the next matchup. But I did parlay him up on Bet365 as well, because that's the best market price on him, minus 455. Valdez, minus 700 it was when I played it. Now he's minus 769. It's the best market price available. So, I touched that Valdez price at about half of what it is on the sharpest books. But still, I kept my exposure small here. I went a little less than 1 unit, and I parlayed that as well with the other character we'll talk about later on this card. So I like to do sometimes stackable parlays if I have varying degrees of confidence. And this is one where, Holmes, I have a strong degree of confidence in. So I'm going to include him in most of my parlay action this weekend.
Yeah, man, I completely see why. And the other thing to mention too is Shonte Barnes was supposed to fight Cody Brundage, who already got put in the UFC. If you're getting a fight to the UFC before you fight your Dana White Contender Series fight, that means you were set up to win that fight. You were expected to win that one. So Dana White over there, he sets up a fight for Cody Brundage to win. And instead of having that fight go through, he gives him the contract right away. It was a setup fight for him. And I think it's a setup fight for Holmes as well. I think Holmes is going to win here. I never, ever, ever place multiple units on Dana White Contender Series. But including the parlay I played yesterday, the play I got going on with you, the same one as you, I have almost 3.5 units on him here. So it's a really tough one to look at, especially because I just mentioned not going huge on low-level fighters, but I think he's better everywhere. I know you said he can win the minutes, and I do agree, but I think that if it hits the mat at all, clear advantage for him, and I think he gets it done pretty easily.
Awesome. Well, glad that we are in agreement there. Always like when that happens, but we're also not afraid to hash it out when we disagree, because we're trying to give people an honest perspective. These are cage fights. There's a lot of variables that go into them, so we're always trying to look and extract that value as best we can, but always better when we line up on the same side, because we're trying to make that paper and trying to give you guys good reads as well. So looking to the next fight on the card, man, a lot of action both ways here. We've got a fighter in on short notice. On the Weems side, Joshua Weems, this is the guy I wanted to catch up on the tape, man. I sort of had familiarized myself with Fernie Garcia, and I hadn't familiarized myself with Weems as much before I went on Narco's show last night. But I had already been leaning towards the Weems side just a bit based on what I saw from Fernie Garcia. The more I went into Fernie Garcia today after going into the Weems tape, I'm just not sure who's going to win this fight. I don't like the weight miss. Weight misses kind of complicate my analysis of these fights, especially fights that I think are going to involve some grappling and some wrestling positions. I think it's a big advantage to miss weight. But with that being said, I think that the skills are probably a little bit better on the Fernie Garcia side, a little bit more developed. But I like the attitude and the fighting spirit that you see on the other side. He's taking fights. He took a couple bare knuckle boxing matches, won some, lost some, taking a bare knuckle MMA fight, but he's kind of eking out decisions. He makes a lot of bad decisions in fights, causes himself to lose position, costs himself top position when he has it at times. But I would say he's also got a lot of heart. I've seen him fight through being in bad positions for extended minutes and come back to get the win. I've seen him drop the first round and come back to win the second round and or finish somebody in the second round. So I think that there's some interesting things to like about Josh Weems, but I do think that Fernie Garcia is probably the more polished product overall. When you look at the quality of competition, Josh Weems has been fighting pretty poor fighters. 44% win percentage on 50 total fights. That's not very good. And then on the other side, Fernie Garcia, again, not great competition, 42-61. So at least more experienced competition, but another 40% win percentage. So these are two guys that haven't been fighting the toughest quality of competition, but I still would rate the quality of Fernie's competition to be a little higher. I think that Fernie is probably going to be, a better pure boxer in this contest. I think he might even have better pure skills in every position, honestly. But I do think that Weems is a tough guy and a tough bastard and not that easy to look good against. The action that I took in this fight was that this fight ends inside the distance at plus 135. I put one unit down on that. And I think that kind of covers my bases. Weems tends to be a sub or bust kind of fighter. He can also crack just a little bit. But I think he would be a club and sub kind of guy before he's a, rain down, relentless ground and pound shots on you or something. So Weems is a little bit tricky, though. I do think it's a little hard to line up against him. But with that being said, I think Fernie Garcia is a justified favorite here. Do I think that minus 250 is appropriate? Maybe it's a little wide, but I do think that Fernie's probably going to get the win here. I don't like that he's coming in on short notice. I don't like, the fact that he missed weight, what that could say about his cardio and his preparedness. Although, physically, I will say, again, referring back to my weigh-in notes, Weems missed weight at 139. Garcia makes weight at 136. Garcia looked on point, in my opinion, whereas Weems, he looked okay. He had a big flex when they told him to, but it wasn't the most musculature that I've ever seen on a UFC level fighter. I think that Fernie probably looks a little bit more athletic than he does by and large. So, I'm gonna ultimately pick Fernie here, but I don't have any action on the money line on this fight. Gordo, I'm gonna kick it to you with that. How do you feel about this?
Yeah, I mean, this is one where it's just a complete pass for me, I think, in my opinion. I think the line's a bit too wide. I do think that Weems has some very solid, incredible skills, and I'll give him that. But you have a complete contrast in styles in terms of technicality. I don't think Weems is that technically sound on the feet at all. Whereas Garcia, I think you got to give him credit. Like he's able to put together those technical strikes. He's able to land with decent power, but he also has those wrestling chops that he's going to be able to use in this fight as well. And we've seen Weems struggle a bit in that time. So it's a spot where I think that Valdez is Valdez, not Valdez. What am I doing here, man? I do think that that'll be a good fight, and Garcia does have an ability to win this fight. But even if that does happen, I don't think that he'll live up to his price tag. I think if he wins anything, it'll probably be a decision. Unfortunately, sorry for your under. I know that Weems is a tough guy, and honestly, I could even see Garcia grinding this out for a while. If I was howling a Garcia ticket, I may be a bit scared that Weems is able to lock something up from the bottom. He has a really credible ground game, and I'll give him that. But it's tough to see anything else happening in my opinion. I don't think that Weems is going to knock him out. I think that if a knock is going to happen, it will be on the Garcia side. It's way more technical sound, but it's just not something I really want to bank on. But I know you did get a good. What line do you on that again? I know you got a good plus money number on the under.
Plus 135, which is best market price.
And I capped it to be a bit lower probability than that, but I do see that happening in terms of you can see a sub from the Weems side or a knockout from the Garcia side, in my opinion. So,
and I honestly think Garcia is kind of due for a finish, man. Like if you watch his fights, he has people on the ropes. Like he lands a lot of clean punches. He seems to have a decent amount of power. He's hurting guys, just not finishing. I think that a short notice opponent, it just might provide that kind of opportunity. And that Weems is probably going to sell out for a first-round submission in the spot based on his cardio level. So it's like those are the kind of things that point to me as plus money being interesting on the fight doesn't go. But, yeah, dude, I totally get the concern. I do think Fernie Garcia typically wins decisions. He typically brings fights to close decisions, honestly. So that's why I do think from a money line perspective, it's a little harder to back him here. But I can see everything that you're saying. I wish FanDuel was available on the Contender Series events in New Jersey because, a double chance on Fernie to win by KO or decision would probably be my favorite play on this overall. Although, I suppose I could see a submission, but it doesn't seem as the most likely path.
It'd be a very late round submission, in my opinion. It'd be only when Weems gets really, really tired and starts giving stuff up. I do think that when he's fresh, he's able to fend that stuff off.
Weems does make mistakes on the ground, though, man.
He does.
All it takes is one bad position. And I will say, go back. The further I went back in Fernie's tape, the more I saw. And granted, it was against much lower level opposition, but he was actually pretty good at taking the back. He was pretty good at finishing rear naked chokes when he was on there. So just a couple things to note. I do think. I kind of was skeptical about his ground game because I saw him get taken down in some of his more recent fights. But then I went back and watched because Narco kept telling me, he's like, no, he's sound on the ground. And I was like, oh, all right. And then I went back and looked, he's pretty sound on the ground. And even in the fights where guys were threatening submissions, guillotines, whatever, he's able to pass. He seems like he knows what he's doing. So I like that about him. The more I went back in his tape, the more confidence I had that Fernie's not just going to throw himself into a stupid submission. But I do think the hit ability is really my concern. It only takes one crack on the chin, stumble a little bit, wobble. And, we've seen that this guy Weems will jump on something. He is a dog, so that's why I just don't want to line up, my guns to drop the hammer on Fernie Garcia. But I do think he's probably going to win this fight. And probably a little convincingly as the fight goes on.
I do see that as well. The only reason I'm not the biggest fan of the under is maybe I'm giving too much credit to the bare knuckle fighting fights. I mean, if you're willing to go in there and take shots without any gloves on, and maybe you have confidence in your chin in that spot. Again, short notice doesn't help. He was knocked out in 2 fights, so it's not like he's the most impenetrable chin. So I don't know, man. I think it's a complete pass for me. But if I had your spots, I wouldn't be too worried about it at all.
Awesome. And just for the people at home, if you guys have access to FanDuel Sportsbook, Weems moneyline is plus 205. And on the sharpest books, it's plus 186, plus 185. So that's a stale line. It's not above plus 200 anywhere else on the
Or
market.
if you get
yeah.
If you get Bunkhoots' book, plus 240 that's something.
That's insane. Yeah, I would love that book. It's not on best fight odds, but I feel you for sure. You got a great line there, and I would probably take some shares there. Now, that being said, guys, we can move right along. We've got two more fights here, but one more fight before we make it to the main event. So we've got a flyweight bout here. Arguably the best fight on the card. Carlos Hernandez. If you just look at his professional record, you say 6-1, kind of inexperienced guy. Taking on a guy with a lot more experience on the other side, 12-4, Daniel Barez. But you look a little deeper into the Hernandez side. This guy was 13-2 as an amateur. What else did I have written down about him? I was pretty impressed. Even his pro level competition, they've been guys that don't have that many fights, but they've also been, a 64.3% win percentage. That's a huge departure from those guys that we saw earlier in the card, right? So you can see the quality difference, in my opinion, when you look at who these fighters are beating, who they're competing against. It says something about where your career's headed, in my opinion, who you're willing to take on as a challenge. Because if you're looking for, another 0-13 opponent at 6-0 or 7-0, it's because you're not very good, in all likelihood, or at least from what I've seen, by and large, watching tape on these guys, it's that they don't have that many skills themselves, and they're looking to keep building up a record. So we have to wait and see, but this is a fight that's closely lined. Actually seen a complete flip on this fight. Offshores opened up this fight with Hernandez as the minus 185 favorite.
Wow.
He closed up to minus 120, minus 140 is what he was sitting at. And now you see him all the way to plus money in the market average. I think he's back down to minus 102, maybe market average, but really, really, so I'm just going to say now, unfortunately, no, this is not a stream for the fights. This is just
Not yet.
a stream for betting information. But, would love to hook you up with that stream. Just can't do so, unfortunately. That would also probably get my channel yanked. So appreciate that we got 27 people rocking live with us, though. Salute each and every one of you guys. Let's try and get some money here. Gordo, we'll kick it to you, brother. Do you have strong thoughts or feelings either way on this matchup?
I think it's tough that these guys are paired up against each other because they're probably the two most UFC-ready guys in the card, if I'm being completely honest. I think they both have really, really credible skills. And I think that the fact that the line opened up minus 25 maybe does say something here. I'm on the Hernandez side. I think that, actually, when we were doing this stream, I saw plus 115 in my book, and I snagged that right away. So I have a unit at plus 115 on Hernandez. Nice. I think it's gone now right away, but it was that's what sealed the deal for me. I think that whoever is favored in this, whoever's the underdog in the spot is going to be a good bet, in my opinion. They're both very, very high quality guys, and they both have very, let's say, binary ways to win this fight. I think that you could split it half-half, and it's going to be a very, very even fight. I'm going to be sweating this plus 115 ticket as it is. But the way I see it going is Hernandez got some great, credible ground skills, and I think that the way that you look at how he throws his kicks against him, spinning, choke slam it.
Yes.
You look at the way that Barez throws his powerful leg kicks, and it's going to open up to some counters and some even takedowns by Hernandez. Hernandez is very, very reactive, and that's what I like the best about him. Is I really like the way he's able to counter these punches, counter these kicks, and work into his ground game as well. I think if it stays on the feet, you're going to have a tougher time if you're betting Hernandez, and you're going to be more happy if you're on the Barez side. But on the ground, I give it to Hernandez, and just whoever's going to be able to execute their game plan. I'm going to edge with here, like I said earlier. Whoever's the plus money underdog in the spot is the side I was going to be on. And the more and more I see plus 115, I'm liking Hernandez. I think if he gets to the ground, it's going to look great. It's going to be a very, very competitive bout. And I'm really looking forward to this.
Absolutely, man. And I think that just from, a raw optics standpoint, I thought Hernandez looked phenomenal at the weigh-in. I thought that he looked big, strong, bricked up, a little thicker probably than his opponent at the face-off. And, Barez, not to say he didn't look good. He looked fine. He had big traps, whatever. I didn't see, tremendous muscle definition. He doesn't strike me as like an unbelievable athlete. He's also 32 years of age, right? So we've got the much younger guy in Hernandez who opened as a significant favorite. He's been bet down very significantly now. I don't know that I agree I think that I'm probably going to end up on the Hernandez side overall. I don't know if I'm going to track a play on it, but I was considering a half unit at minus 102 because I do think that this guy is probably a minus 125 at least in the spot. So I don't want to get out over my skis. Didn't have access to a great plus number. I wasn't in Jersey when it existed. It didn't exist all that long. It's gone again. So at that minus 102 price, I would probably get in for a small exposure on the Hernandez side, if anything. But this is the fight on the card I don't believe I have any tracked action on whatsoever. I think in my long shot parlays that I put together that are not tracked, I do have Hernandez as one of my legs. So, that's how I played it. I think that Hernandez is probably the side here. I like backing younger fighters, but, I will say this is the fight that I think is going to go to decision more often than not out of the fights that are on this card. And, I think that if that's the case, it could get dicey down the stretch. I think this should be a fun fight and competitive both ways, but I would overall favor the younger guy.
Yeah, and I'd take this fight to be minus 115 for Hernandez. So you're giving me plus 115. I had to hop all over that one. Again, my Contender Series units are not the same for my UFC units, but I do have a single unit on Hernandez at plus 115, and I'm loving it. I think that he has the tools to win this fight. Hopefully he's able to execute his game plan. I do think he lands a couple takedowns, and he secures it. I do see it going to decision as well. But it's all about execution here. You got a guy who wants to keep it on the feet, a guy who wants to bring it to the mat. I think Hernandez gets it done.
Awesome. So guys, with that, we have one fight left on this card to break down. And you know what that means. I have not asked you yet. I will ask you now. Please go ahead and spinning back fist, that like button, as Graham said, you could drop an elbow on it. You can axe kick it, whatever you need to do. Just make sure you hit it. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel every week with the Dana White's Contender Series action. Me and Gordo have been here. Haven't missed yet for whatever that's worth. Also, just want to mention, guys, I do another show. I break down the UFC card every week. I normally bring on a panel of rotating guests. We have been absolutely killing it on the show, been on a heat streak. And just want to mention to you guys that all this free content is brought to you by PrizePicks. So PrizePicks helps make this show possible. They sponsor the show. I appreciate them every time. People talking about I can't get action down on the Contender Series. Let me tell you something. PrizePicks.com, they offer stat projections, fight time, significant strikes, fantasy score, all these projections on the Contender Series. Not many places are offering that. You can find that all over the country, by the way. So in places where you're not access to legal sports books, this is a great alternative. It's a lot of fun. I'm thinking of playing the under on a couple of these big favorites on PrizePicks because there's no lines. It's just a single stat projection. So if you guys decide you want to play along and check out those lines, follow me on Twitter at LiamPicksFights. I'll play any PrizePicks entry that I have. I'll post it up there. And, let's try and take these guys to task. Go ahead and use my promo code Liam, and you will get 100% deposit match on your first deposit. Up to $100. So thank you guys very much for bearing with me. We are done with the ad reads. We are on to the last fight of the night, and it's a good one, man. It's one that I'm really excited about. Had fun looking into these guys. Admittedly, looked more into the Malott side than his opponent. But with that being said, I liked everything I saw on the Malott side. This is a guy who's been fighting credible fighters, lost to Hakeem Dawodu a long time ago in a gunfight. They really went to war, met in the middle of the cage when they were both undefeated guys. And, my concern about Malott is that he's a little bit hittable. That's my only concern about him. I think sometimes it takes a couple shots to the face to wake this guy up. But when he's awake, man, he's effing scary. Solomon Renfro, I mentioned this on the chat with Narco if you were there, but this is a really important anecdote. It's like I've kind of been following this guy's career for a long time because I've been tangentially related to it. I worked out with his friends from Western New York MMA. They used to come in and get wrestling rounds when I was wrestling club at University of Buffalo. So I met the guys from Western New York MMA. They had mentioned at the time, this guy, Solomon Renfro, pretty good. Now he trains, again, like 20 minutes from my house, 40 minutes from my house, whatever it is, with the Tiger Schulman's guys, Shane Burgos, Mike Trezano, all those savages in New Jersey. So Solomon Renfro, very talented fighter on the regional scene. And Mike Malott came back, was getting tagged up a little bit by Solomon. And by the way, Solomon's going to touch up a lot more guys. You're going to keep seeing Solomon do that to people. He's very talented. But And he's going to be on the Contender series actually later this year. So everybody will get a chance to see him. Hopefully he does very well. He's 23 years old, but he was out there landing a couple shots, and Malott taught him the vet lesson, was able to crack him really hard with the counter. And Solomon's a confident guy, was in there swinging leather, didn't expect that counter bomb to come from Malott and dropped him quick. And super opportunistic finish, hops right on, never lets go, and actually puts him to sleep, right? So a guy I think very highly of. That's who Mike Malott's last win is over. And, when you look through this guy's career, I think he's fought the more credible opposition. I think that he's got a really credible skill set. I was able to go back and find tape of this guy at Fight to Win, losing close neck-and-neck decisions with Renzo Gracie brown belts, which is a big feather in your cap as far as I'm concerned. That was a couple years back as well. I think he's actually a black belt now in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And on top of that, when you look at this guy's striking on the feet, this is a guy who's been a coach for the likes of Cody Garbrandt and these other Team Alpha Male fighters. He's well respected for his striking. He was well respected on the Canadian regional scene before he ever started fighting in these big pro level fights. People didn't want to fight him in Canada. I think all that speaks very well of this guy. And I think on top of that, I can kind of relate to his, struggle of, do I want to be a coach? Do I want to be an athlete? Do I want to, it's something that if you have the coaching impulse in you, you always debate, am I being selfish? Should I give more time to giving back and teaching as opposed to trying to learn skills myself and compete? And so I think a lot of factors in this fight lead towards the Malott side as far as I'm concerned. I did put down my action at a price that I don't believe exists anymore. So minus 178, currently the best market price on Mike Malott. I locked it in at minus 165, a 1.65 unit bet. And I'm very happy to have that line. Market average, Mike Malott is minus 187 right now. So was able to get some closing line value there. I do think he is probably the side here. My concern would be the age. I talked about age as a factor. We've got a very young guy on the other side, but I've also mentioned before, there's a certain age gap that seems to me to almost be a disadvantage, right? Which would be a really young man against a fighter in their prime. And I think that Mike Malott is probably, if not in his prime, on the tail end of his prime based on his age. And we've got a guy who hasn't even scratched the surface of his prime on the other side, a very young man, younger than me. I can only imagine the kind of lifestyle and dedication it's taken him to get this far. He's got a decent number of pro fights as well. So a lot to like about the kid. I think he's going to have a bright future, all things considered. But, Mike Malott, if he's going to lose this fight, he probably needs to get stung. He needs to get hurt. He needs to get controlled. And I think it's going to be hard for, his opponent to do that. So I'm on Mike Malott here. He is also the parlay piece that I described before. So I have 1.04 units tied up with Mike Malott at minus 165 and Joseph Holmes to win. The parlay odds there are minus 104. So hoping to win, 2 units on my man Mike Malott this weekend. And otherwise, I don't have any action on that fight besides that. But yeah, I really like Mike in this spot. I think he's a credible challenge. And I think that he's probably a lot more UFC ready at this point. So I'm going to back Mike in the spot and hope that, the cage time isn't a factor. But I think he's been in the gym. I know that he's been working hard with credible pro fighters for a long time. I think he's the side.
And hey, first of all, I have the exact same parlay as you. I think I have a bit weaker odds. I think I got minus 106 on that. You beat me there. But before I go into any more into detail, first of all, I know Gordo Gamble's the Canadian guy betting on another Canadian fighter. I know. No, but I think it's just a levels fight. You have a guy completely inexperienced, very, very young, as you mentioned, facing not that good of fighters versus someone who has wins over those big guys, someone who I think was holding his own and potentially even beating Hakeem Dawodu on the regional scene. So you got to give him that as well. This man is legit, and he is a great coach, and I think he's able to use those skills that he's been coaching in the cage tonight, actually in a few hours. I think that he's got some great skills, and it's funny that someone who is the striking coach is such a good, credible guy on the ground. I thought no matter where this fight's over, he's got him beat here. It's going to be, like you said, a vet lesson, and I'm very happy to do that. I have the exact same parlay as you. I got my 1 unit on Holmes and our boy here. I'm I'm horrible with names today with Malott here as well. And then I also got a nice little 1-unit parlay with Mike Malott and Chris Gutierrez, who's fighting this weekend right there. We can talk about that later this week, but hey, there we go. I do think that Malott's the side here, more talented, more experience, better ground game, hold his own on the feet as well. And you just really haven't tested Shimon at all. So I think he gets it done here. Let's go Canada. Let's hope we get that going. You're muted, my friend. You're muted.
Rats and crackers, boys. What the hell am I doing? I'm an amateur. I'm a first timer. Sorry about that, folks. Gramp says, I'm Canadian, and I'll be the first to fade a Canadian myself. Just can't do it here. Jason says, unfortunate truth. Fading Canadians is very profitable in MMA.
Did you see?
And that's always true when the GOAT's not in the cage. That's what I'll say. What's that, Gordo?
Misha Serkinov out of the rankings. No Canadian ranked the top 15 in UFC at all.
I did see that. And I could tell you, Min Hakeem, I think, is the best Canadian in the UFC
100%
right now. And I would also say Misha is not very good. I tried to warn you guys. I know this was a close fight, but if you're losing close decisions to Krzysztof Jotko, it's like,
yeah, I know. I got Casey on the other show up for me, so I'm good.
What's that?
I got Casey on the other show up for me, so that counters each other out.
Big time, dude. Can I just tell you, I cost myself thousands of dollars by picking Shevchenko, and who else cost me? There was only 2 fights I got wrong last week. So it was Shevchenko and somebody else cost me all my long – effing Johnny Walker. Effing Johnny Walker, dude. I don't even want to think about him. That's why. My goodness, dude. I was sitting on a $5 to win $350 on Johnny Walker, and I'm hearing Kavanaugh say, you're winning the fight at going into the 5th round, and I'm just like, they hate me. They just want to burn my money. What's a man to do, Gordo?
Well.
All we can do is try and make the reads. I bet him at plus 195. He's 2 rounds apiece against a freaking 37-year-old with no knees. And he's like, you know what I should do? Faint more. All right. God bless you. God bless you. I don't know how to help you, Johnny. But as far as I'm concerned, folks, that's everything. We touched every fight on the card. If you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to hit those real quick on the way out. Otherwise, if I make any late additions, you can always check on Twitter at LiamPicksFights. I actually tweeted out some of my plays earlier today. And so, if you guys ever want to see, I will post an updated slate. I normally, tweet as I'm watching along with these fights. Hopefully one of these days I'll even hop on and do a recap of one of these cards right after they happen. But I think that overall I'm expecting violence. I'm expecting good fun. I'm expecting silliness. I'm expecting this sport to be as crazy as it always is. And I'm appreciative of each and every one of you guys for tuning in, supporting us with your time, effort, and attention. Always appreciate when you do. So again, if you guys have any questions on the way out, you could drop them in the chat. And if not, I'm going to kick it over to my man Gordo. Let the people know where they can find you. And thank you very much for coming on again, my brother. Hopefully we turn this into another profitable week for the people.
Hey, another week, and I am happy to be here. I appreciate the offer as always. We've also been killing it on my channel as well on Friday. I am part of Plays and Fade Sports. I've commented a few times there if you guys want to check out my channel there as well. Posting NFL, UFC, DFS every single week for that slate as well. And along with Twitter, I'm posting bets there as well, DFS content for almost every sport. Even posted an NHL preseason line because I was at the game yesterday. So anything you need, let me know. DMs are always open. Message me there. But no, as for tonight, man, I'm super happy with my plays. Got a lot of Holmes action. I got a lot of Malott action. And I got a little shot in Hernandez as well. So I'm really liking when I got there as well. Appreciate you for having me on as always. And I'm going to ask one thing is that if someone can tweet me what happened to the main event today. I'm going to see Venom today at like 9:45, and I'm worried I'm going to miss the last fight. I got some money on it. So you can shoot me a text. I know you will, my friend.
Oh, absolutely. Hopefully we will be cashing in together because I know we're on the same side for that main event. So let's hope our boy pulls through for us. Once again, guys, just want to say thank you to everybody lighting up the chat today. Notice one thing. We've had a lot more ladies jumping in the chat, reaching out, being a part of the show. Really appreciate that, guys. Want this to be a place where anybody who's taking action on these fights can come through. Let us know where they're on, what you're thinking, what you're feeling. And hopefully we could talk each other out of bad bets. And we could talk each other into some great reads, make some cash, and bleed these bookies because it's all of us, good guys like me and Gordo and you against these bookies each and every week. Let's take them to task again. We've been on a great run, and we appreciate you guys coming with us. So this has been one more great episode of Liam Picks Fights. God bless you all. Enjoy those fights, and until next time, come back. We'll have all the same fun again.